right. So we're all here for Intro to Tarot. So a little bit about me. My name is Amy. You may have seen me at Blue Island or from somewhere else. I've been practicing tarot for about 5 years now, maybe a little bit longer. I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means, but I enjoy doing it, and it is something that I do every day and I like to talk about with my friends. So, I'm always learning, which is one of the things that I really, really like about tarot to begin with. So, in today's presentation, I'm going to go over three main things. Um, I will say right up front, each of these things could be its own class. So I'm doing them very much in brief, but I do have some resources at the end to share if you want to learn more about any one of these three things. So the first part, we're going to talk about the history of tarot and the origins of it. The second part, I'm going to talk briefly about the cards, specifically the major and minor arcana of a tarot deck. And then we're going to close out with how to actually start reading tarot and start doing it yourself. So the history of tarot is almost as old as card games itself. A lot of tarot card decks started off with just taking a normal playing card deck and using that for reading your fortune or anything else. So a lot of tarot cards originated from European trick card games like Tarocchini, Scopa, French Tarot. If you're familiar with any of those, they're all around Europe in different regions. The first documented use of tarot cards being used for cartomancy or reading your fortune with cards was in the 1400s. And the shift to our traditional tarot card decks started happening in the late 18th century as cartomancy became more popular. Early tarot decks were often hand painted and one of a kind. Usually the very rich were able to get these cards made. And many borrowed imagery from popular occult stuff at the time. So think about the Egyptian craze. That was super huge. And you'll see a lot of imagery from that in early tarot card decks, or lots of Judeo-Christian imagery in there. It all depended on the person who commissioned the tarot deck and what that would look like. I do have some examples of some of the things I mentioned. So on the left, you'll see a Tarocchini deck. And then on the right, there's a Tarot cards and Tarot cards. All kind of the same. You're starting to see where the name tarot comes from. They're really similar to playing cards that we use today, especially the tarot cards. You'll see like things that look like our King of Diamonds, Queen of Hearts, the Joker. Card wise, most of these were similar shape to the size of a tarot card today. So a little bit like the size of my hand. Whereas the tarot and the Scopa cards were usually a little bit smaller, but still that elongated shape. So on the left here, we have the Marseille deck, and the Marseille deck is one of the most famous historical decks that gained popularity in France in the 17th and 18th centuries, and inspired further deck design in Switzerland, Belgium, other neighboring states as the popularity of cartomancy burgeoned in France. Around this time too, there was a famous French occultist named Atelier. I don't speak French, so I couldn't find a good pronunciation of his name. You can see him on the right over here. And he really helped popularize tarot in France through his card divination. So he was really hustling. He knew exactly how to market himself. He used a regular playing card deck in the beginning, which was 32 cards with an extra special Atelier card to tell people's fortunes. But then as he gained popularity and started getting the notice of the French court, he eventually made his own tarot deck called the Grand Atelier. You can see an example of his card, the death card on the right as well. So he's really someone who started pushing tarot in France and traveling to different courts to tell people's fortunes, and it became more of a popular thing. Probably the most famous deck, and a deck you'll see at every Barnes and Noble, Little Witch Shop, like really anywhere is the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. If you're watching a movie and there's a tarot reader in there and they pull out the death card or something like that, it's probably a Waite-Smith deck. The Waite-Smith deck was designed by Pamela Coleman Smith. Her background is super fascinating, and I wish I could talk about her more, but we just don't have time. She was originally from the US, but then traveled to England to work for a very famous theater group at the time called Lyceum. She had an art background, so most of the time she was doing illustrating for the theater posters, as well as she did some books as well. And a lot of the people in Lyceum Theater Group were into tarot and divination and the occult and decided to make a deck together. So Pamela Coleman Smith illustrated the deck all herself. She did the major and minor arcana, and a lot of the imagery that we see in her cards solidified the deck. Arthur Golden Waite is the one who wrote the guidebook, and Pamela Coleman Smith is the one who illustrated the cards, and that together made a lot of the iconography that we see in almost every tarot deck iteration since then. One of the most interesting things about her career and her work on the tarot deck that she made is that many of the figures in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck are based on people from the Lyceum Theater Group and the occult group that she was a part of. And when I say cult, I don't mean like they're doing animal sacrifices. It was mostly intellectuals who wanted to get together and discuss the supernatural and the outside world and divination. So they're not sacrificing ghosts for the most part. So a lot of this theater group was part of that occult group. And she based a lot of the figures in her deck on people in the theater troupe. So the Emperor card that we see on this slide is actually based on Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. He was very integral in the theater group and became sort of a friend to Pamela Coleman Smith until she eventually left the group. So I think that's really fascinating that if you ever pick up a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, a lot of those people are real people from the theater group. So this is a nice segue to getting into the cards. What are the major arcana and what are the minor arcana? So every tarot deck has 78 cards. There are 22 major arcana cards and 56 minor arcana cards. The major arcana are like your trump cards if you were doing a traditional like card trump deck, and the minor arcana are the suit cards. So if you had a regular deck of playing cards, it'd be very, very similar to the minor arcana. So with the major arcana, there are 22 cards ranging from 0 to 21. And them in itself were used for cartomancy for a really long time before the minor arcana got introduced. And the really interesting thing about it is that each one follows a life cycle going from 0 to 21. 0 starts with the Fool, and as the cards move sequentially, we can see the Fool's journey as he learns, grows, and changes, all culminating in card 21, which is the World. You know, just like the Fool, when we receive a major arcana card in a reading, it means big events or big changes. So if you get one of those, you know, something cool is about to happen in your life, or maybe that decision that you're thinking about making, it's a big one and you should really be thoughtful about it. So I picked some of my favorite cards. Again, I could do a whole class on just the major arcana, but I thought I'd pick out some ones that you'd probably be familiar with. So number 1, Death, which is card 13. Again, if you are a big horror movie fan or really any movie fan, this is always the signifier that death is in the character's future and oh no, bad things are going to happen. And it really doesn't mean that. The imagery is a little scary. You know, you see this skeleton on a white horse with a flag and everyone is crying. But it actually signifies change and transformation. If you look at the imagery that Pamela Coleman Smith did, you'll see like the sun is kind of rising at the end. There's a boat, there's a lot of signifiers and iconography of change. So even though things are ending, it doesn't mean that it's final. Things change, they evolve, we're all transitioning. So I really like this card. It's not as scary as you think it is. there are way scarier cards to get in the major arcana. Another one that you probably see in a bunch of movies is the devil. You know, especially in the horror movies, like you get this and it's like, whoa, the house is haunted, or I'm being hunted by a demon, something really silly like that. But it more signifies unhealthy attachments and addictions we have in life. Even if you look at the card imagery, this is a little bit more abstract one from the Biddy Tarot deck. But it's this kind of devil-like figure, and he's holding two people on a leash. But it's very easy to see that the leash is very loose, and that if the person kind of overcomes their addictions and attachments, they can easily escape. So not as scary as you think yet again, but it is a kind of fun card to look at. Now, this is one that it is exactly what you think it is, the Tower, which comes towards the end of the 22 cards. It signifies sudden change and chaos, but I think it's also important to note that, you know, within the chaos, there's also an awakening or reckoning too. If we think back to that Fool's journey, starting from 0 and going to 21, after the Tower is the Star, which signifies hope and purpose. So going back to that journey, you know, when bad things happen, it really brings us down. But just thinking about the rest of our journey, the next card is a signifier of change and growth and purpose. So if you pull the Tower, you're probably not going to have a great week, but hopefully things will be on the up and up from there. Now, the minor arcana reflect more of our everyday life, our daily struggles, our victories, and our issues. You know, as we talked about, the major arcana means big changes. The minor arcana reflects temporary moments, things that can easily be changed or adapted to. And like our traditional playing card deck, there are 56 cards, 4 suits with face cards, your ace, king, queen. Instead of a jack, there's a page, and then there's also a knight as well. So these are the minor arcana suits. We have wands, which mean creativity, intuition, and ambition. In a lot of traditional playing card decks, oh no, someone said that I am frozen. Is anyone else seeing that my presentation is frozen? Okay, looks like we're all good. So Laura, if it's still frozen, I would try turning off and on your video. Hopefully that boots things up and then kicks it into motion. So give that a try, and if it's not working, then let me know, we can figure it out. So yes, for the wands, in a lot of traditional of the trick playing card decks, it was also called batons or clubs. Wands is a little bit nicer. Pentacles often stands for work, finance, and health. They can also be called coins because they do look like coins. Swords reflect your thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs, very action forward. And cups are your love, relationships, and feelings. And again, this is kind of the standard for many tarot decks, but there are some decks that really play with the imagery here. There's one deck I like made by a local company called Last Craft that's inspired by new wave music, if you've ever heard of new wave music, and it plays with this imagery a lot. So all the major arcana are based off of musicians such as Nick Cave, David Bowie, Iggy Pop, and the arcana suits are a little bit different. So pentacles turn into records, wands into eyeliner, and swords into microphones. So just because this is the standard doesn't mean that it's in every single deck. There's a lot of different things that play around with imagery. So here are some examples of some of the minor arcana. So thinking back, swords often reflect the double-edged nature of humans, the kind of balance of power and intellect, and the use of bad and good. So unfortunately, the Ten of Swords is the bad version of that. It means something very painful or very hurtful is in the future. But as we can see from the imagery, this is a more modern deck, but I really like this picture a lot. There's a sense of calm in knowing that something bad is going to happen and that it's out of our control, and to just kind of roll with it and recover and find some light in the betrayal. Again, looks very doom and gloom, but remember, this is not the end of the world. Cups are very emotional, full of love and feelings, and I really like the Three of Cups card. I always think of it as the brunch card. That's what me and my friends call it. So if I get this, it means I should call up a friend and reconnect with them. Maybe depending on what the global situation is, make a plan to hang out and get brunch. It really signifies community and happiness, and you can see that from the imagery here. This is from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and it's three women all looking at each other, dancing around. There's like a bountiful harvest. They've got their cups up. They're ready to go. I really like this card. It's a happy one. And the Nine of Pentacles. Again, the Pentacles reflect more of the physical world. So your health, your money, your work, creativity. And the Nine of Pentacles means it's time to live it up. So if you look at the imagery, there's this person with a bird and she's got all these beautiful grapevines around her. In the traditional imagery, there's also like a mansion behind her. It means that your hard work has come to fruition and that you'll be reaping the benefits soon. So, you know, maybe treat yourself, get a special meal, do something fun, or don't do any of that. Just have a day to yourself and live it up. Now, when you're doing readings, sometimes you'll hear people talk about reversed cards. And the meaning of that is kind of nebulous. I personally don't always do reverse readings when I do it for others. But basically what a reverse reading is when you pull a card, it shows up upside down and the meaning of the card is reversed. So if we go back to Nine of Pentacles, if I got that reversed, maybe instead of me thinking, oh, time to live it up, I would think, ooh, time to make sure that all my houses are in order. I shouldn't splurge or do anything too fantastic right now. Another really great interpretation of reverse cards I've heard is from Biddy Tarot, who does classes online. I believe she has like an Instagram and she's put out a few books as well. She interprets reverse cards as an upright card is how you express yourself externally, and a reverse card is how you express yourself internally. Sorry. So for example, if I pull the Empress card, which usually means taking care of others, if it comes up reversed or upside down, like in this picture, I would maybe interpret that as instead of taking care of others, perhaps I should take care of myself. Just like tarot, a lot of practice and meaning can be adapted to your personal preference. So like I said, I usually don't even do reverse cards. Some people do. Biddy Tarot kind of interprets it as an internal, external thing. Some people interpret it as this means the exact opposite of what the card means. It's all depending on your personal practice. I know this all sounds very overwhelming. Tarot is a lot. It's almost like any board game or card game that you've played. It's a lot of memorization, which segues nicely into how can I start reading tarot? What are the benefits? Why should I do it in the first place? Well, I mean, first things first is just fun. It's a fun way to connect with others and enjoy unique artwork. I mean, there are hundreds of websites out there that talk about tarot decks that people collect, and you know, from ancient to modern, there's so many different ways and different decks to buy. I'll show you some of mine once we stop the presentation. I have a lot, probably too much, but it's a great thing to collect and enjoy. It's also really helpful to unstick your mind. It's a great way to aid in creative problem solving. So if you I know a lot of writers that use tarot decks to almost unstick themselves from writer's block, or there's just something you're mulling over and you want to know what you really think, sometimes the tarot is a great way to do that, because no matter what card comes up, it's going to be the answer that you actually want. And, you know, it's better than flipping a coin. Tarot can really help you make a choice. I'm not a person who uses tarot to fuel every decision in my life, but sometimes if I'm stuck and I don't know what to do, you know, it's better than flipping a quarter. It's prettier to look at and it's a little bit more fun. And it's cheap. All you really need is a tarot deck. And I've even seen some people who print out their own decks with just printer paper and do it themselves. So the easiest way to do a reading is you take your tarot deck and you shuffle it up. And usually as I'm shuffling, I think about the question I want answered. So you know what? I'll take out my deck right now and show you. So if you're like me and you have small hands, whoa, something fell out of here. A deck like this is sometimes a little bit too big for your hand. So usually when I shuffle up my cards, I split it up and break it up into parts and kind of go that way. But I'll shuffle up the deck and think about a question I want answered. For instance, like, you know, I have 2 jobs I'm kind of thinking of, which one should I go for? Or, you know, I have this friend who is making a bad decision. Should I say something? Or, you know, it doesn't even have to be something that complicated. It could even be something as simple as, you know, trying to think of where to go on vacation. Where should I go? So you shuffle up the deck. I usually cut my deck up into 3 piles after that, and then stack them back up in a random order. If I'm doing a reading for someone else, I'll let them cut the deck into 3 stacks and then stack it back up. And then you just pull a card from the top. So for this hypothetical question, I pulled the Queen of Swords. There it is. Oh, there it is. Since I didn't really have a question in mind, I'm not gonna interpret what that means, but it's really that easy. And it gets a little bit more complicated because then it does become, well, okay, I pulled the Queen of Swords. What does that actually mean? And I'll get to some tips on how to memorize that. Even I, someone who does this almost every day, does not remember everything. It's just really impossible. So there are lots of resources out there to help out. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I actually made like a little notebook that I reference. I wrote down some notes from resources I really like and made my own guide. A lot of decks will even come with the book now, which is really helpful because it's tiny and you can just keep it with your tarot deck. And there's lots and lots of other ways to help you remember. You're not alone. Memorization is not my strong suit either, so don't worry about it. So some common readings, for everyday stuff, I usually do a 1-card reading. So that's a simple answer or guidance for your day. Usually when I start out the day, I'll do a 1-card reading, whether with physical cards or there's even phone apps now that do it for you, which is a great way to learn. And it's just like a little boost to start your day. 3 cards are for more robust answers and questions. So if you think about 3 cards lined up, some common spends are like your past, present, and future. So if you have a bigger question like, where am I going in my career? You can talk about your past in 1 card, your present job in 1 card, and then the future. Or situation, obstacle, advice. There's a lot of different interpretations for your 3 cards. I've even seen some where it's like reasons why I'm awesome. And instead of past, present, future, it's like things I've done in the past that I'm proud of, things I've done in the present that I'm proud of, and things I'll do in the future that I'll be proud of. So there's some cute ways to do it. The Celtic Cross is probably something that you'd receive from a professional tarot reader. This is the one, it actually does kind of look like a cross. It's a very comprehensive answer to your question, and it's one of the hardest to navigate. So think about how hard it is to interpret 1 card right now while you're learning. and then think about interpreting, 10, 15 cards all at the same time. So it gets a little tricky. Even I have, it takes a while if I do a Celtic cross reading, but it is kind of fun to learn. And there's so many other different types of readings. People make up readings. If you're into this, they make up readings to align to the moon phases or zodiac phases. People make readings as like mood boosters. There's so many different ways that you can do readings. It really, sky's the limit, but these are the more traditional ways. The best way to learn tarot is to just practice like anything. Or, think back to the origins of tarot and how it all started from card games. Probably those people were good at figuring out what the meaning of tarot was because they'd memorized all the cards. Practice, practice, practice. The only way you're going to learn what the cards are is by seeing them. And again, one thing I find helpful is making my own journal. That way it's in my words. And personally, as a learner, I learn better if I write the thing down. So it took some time. I made that journal, 1 page for each of the major arcana, and then like 2 cards on a page for the minor arcana. And it really helped me learn what they are and just kind of keep it in my mind. And again, it's a great reference point when you need to be like, what is that card? I can't remember what that card is. And another great motivator is to find a deck that you like. There's thousands of decks, probably more than thousands of decks out there, and your perfect one is waiting. I know there is a superstition that you should never buy your own deck. It should be gifted to you. But as a collector, I always end up purchasing my own deck. I don't really subscribe to that, but you never know, to each his own. And if you do want to learn some more, I have some books that I use and some websites that I use that I think would be very helpful. The first one, The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean. By the way, I believe all these books are within the Swan system, if not at Blue Island. So request them, look them up, check them out before you purchase them if you're interested. The Ultimate Guide to Tarot by Liz Dean is just a great reference point for the cards. Liz goes really into the imagery in the cards, which I personally find fascinating. Like, what does this boat mean in the death card? Or what do these things mean in this card? It's very in-depth, and she breaks it down into upright meanings and reversed readings. So again, if you do plan on reading reversed cards, I think that's a really great resource. How to Deal Tarot for Everyday Life. It's geared more towards teens, but I really like the way that they present the information. Oh, good question, Amy. I'll answer that in a second. Yeah, the How to Deal book, it's very, very simple, but I like that they keep it pretty positive. You'll find some tarot books that go way into the history and the occult nature of it. And sometimes you just don't want that. Has a nice imagery. I believe there's an accompanying deck that goes with it too. The author worked with an illustrator to figure it out. So I really like this one. Queering the Tarot by Cassandra Snow, I think is her last name. Also really great. It talks about the origins of tarot, and then how those are being subverted by new creators. And then just a great modern take for tarot is The Modern Tarot, Connecting Your Higher Self Through the Wisdom of the Cards. Websites I use often, Biddy Tarot, which I referenced earlier. She's a professional tarot reader, and Jessica Doors as well. I use Jessica Doors' Twitter a lot to learn the meanings of certain cards because she does a card a day. And then there's a great app called the Golden Thread Tarot that I use a lot to do readings or reference things on the go. It's totally free. There are no ads on it, which is like even better. And it's a great way to learn. They have a little intro class on there through the app, and If you like the look of the app, I think they have a deck you can buy as well. And things like that. I really like it. Amy asked what the origin of the Celtic cross reading is. And I actually don't know that, but I'm gonna look it up once I stop sharing my screen. I believe they talk about it in the Ultimate Guide to Tarot. And I'd be interested to know. My guess is that it started probably in that like 19th, 20th century as cartomancy got really, really popular, but that is a great question. So in fact, I got to the end. So let me stop my screen share and go back. There we go. So while we wait, I'm gonna look up what Celtic cross means in my book. And while I look this up, does anyone have any other questions? Thank goodness for ebooks because it makes finding things like this a lot easier. So yeah, started in Europe, and no one really knows the origin, it looks like. There is some theories that it did start in the UK, so England, Scotland, Ireland, because of the Celtic cross. But, oh, interesting, okay. So that order that the Lyceum Theater Group, who developed the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, was called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and they helped popularize the Celtic crossbed. So it all comes back to Pamela Coleman Smith, my favorite. Love that she's still here. And then some other very famous historical tarot card readers used it as well, like Florence Farr. So that is the origin of that. Annie asked, I just got a deck and they talk about fanning and choosing the card with the left hand. What is the significance of the left? Oh, that's interesting. I mean, traditionally, usually people would say your right hand should be your dominant hand and the left hand is the hand of evil. But I've also heard it as you want to use your left hand for things because that's the hand that you use less if you are right hand dominant. So it has less negative energy or negative connotations. So it's kind of like two different sides of the left hand theory. So I'm guessing that's why your left hand just is used less and therefore has less influence on it. So that could be it. Any other questions?